So before we move on to the evaluations of those speeches, it's my turn to give my reflections on the club and on Toastmasters. And I have to say that coming to Toastmasters has ruined my life. Coming to bank speeches has fed my addiction to Costa cappuccino, a small takeaway cup, skim milk, stuffed with chocolate sprinkles. It's impossible to come to this building in the morning without passing a Costa, and therefore it's fed my addiction every 2 weeks as I've come along. It's got to the point where if I'm driving along the motorway, I will not stop at the services unless they have a Costa. Doesn't matter if people are starving or the kids want to go to the loo, they have to wait. When I come back from an overseas trip, as I did this morning into Terminal 3, the first thing I do is I go to a Costa. Even although the Costa is actually at the departure end of the airport, and I have to go upstairs and around the corner to get there. That's what I do every single time. And unfortunately, I think it also means that I can never go home, because if you go to New Zealand or Australia, they don't have Costas. So I believe I'm stuck here in the UK forever unless they export this product. Apart from that, it's been a fantastic time for me. I was the second president. I followed Justin, who founded the club, and it was a hard act to follow. I think Justin did a fantastic job. I thought my role was to keep building the club up, increase the membership, achieve some awards, and we did achieve a select something or other award. I think it's the first award you can get, and I was very proud of that. And I did find, as you find in life or work or any situation, that the most important thing is to have a good team of people, and it all goes well. And I was very lucky. I had a very strong committee, and we had a very successful year. So I was very proud of that. So thank you for that. That's my end of my reflections. And now I think we should move straight on to the speech evaluations. Now, the first speech was Elizabeth Welsh's Icebreaker, and evaluating Elizabeth was Ian, who's a great friend of the club and a mentor of this club, as Don has mentioned. So I'd like to welcome you up, Ian, to Elizabeth's evaluation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and especially Elizabeth, on an icebreaker speech at a birthday party. Now, actually, I think, having had an email from Elizabeth saying she was almost looking forward to this evening, I think the process of writing a speech for this has been quite a cathartic exercise. As she told us in her opening words, that there's we, not I. I think that conjured up for me big images of how Elizabeth sees herself in her family, in her life. So being able to write about her life, I think it's been quite an interesting exercise, and for me it's certainly very interesting hearing her tell us all about it. And the structure is where I'd like to start. An icebreaker speech lends itself to a timeline style of approach, and I thought Elizabeth did an absolutely fantastic job in giving us a very clear structure of timeline from her early life, from having her own family and marriage, and that Saab convertible. If there's one thing I've learned about Elizabeth tonight, is that she loves her Saab convertible, but not in London. So the structure was very good. We knew where she was going all the way through her speech, from birth to now. Commendation for Elizabeth. The title of her speech, I kind of wasn't quite sure what that meant. Where were we going? And my mind was working on that probably far too long. But the reason for the title of the speech very clearly explained at the end of the speech, which brought us, I love it when you get a speech beginning, go through, and then the title is explained, making a nice whole circle, which I really, really enjoyed. Delivery of an icebreaker. Now, an icebreaker, you are perfectly allowed to use notes, so there's no recommendations there. But what an absolute plethora of gorgeous tools she used to do her speech. We had props. One that I like to see is still up here. Thank you for my evaluation. We have props used very well. They didn't take anything away from what she was saying. They were used very nicely. It was a conversational tone, a very conversational delivery throughout. Whether she knows it or not, Elizabeth uses triads. All the time throughout her speech, lots of things were grouped in three. She said that she was loud, opinionated, and outspoken. Now, I disagree with that, but threes are always good, as we know in Toastmasters, but peppered throughout with lots of humour. that her kids will come on holiday, but only if she and her husband pays. And I noted that lots of the humour were peppered amongst sadder points of the story. So it's quite nice to have that wave of kind of sadness lifting up with some humour throughout. One small recommendation would be to pause occasionally. A lot of information was imparted. A pause, take a deep breath, allows the brain to focus and gives you plenty of air in your lungs for the next paragraph. But very great descriptive language, and she even got the word of the day in there, and there's not many icebreakers that can do that. Finally, on the delivery, repetition. I liked her use of repetition for most of the time. Thought that was very nicely done. In conclusion, a born storyteller we have in our midst. I certainly learnt a lot. And with a bit of bank speaker's love, Elizabeth will develop those existing skills from fizz to few in 6 interesting, anecdotal and well-spoken minutes. Well done.